go to in your calendar. Oh, actually, pull that up right there.
This is here. Is it on there? Oh,
And then scroll down.
the link's on after. Oh, it works. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one attached.
So,
My work emails Miriam Stern also, so sometimes, well, if I can't get in, there's a reason.
Start from the back of the book. Which one is it?
Thank you. Always providing technical assistance.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening. Thank you to those of you who are joining us in person here in the library annex at Cherry Hill High School East, and to those of you who are joining us online via Zoom. We are here this evening. We're going to spend some time this evening talking about middle school redistricting. This is another in our series of community town hall discussions. So I'm glad that you are all here to participate with us. And thank you for taking the time and showing the interest to be here. First, I'd like to do some introductions. I'd like to introduce you to the people that are up here at the table who will be serving on the panel. And again, the purpose this evening is to have an opportunity for the members of the Board of Education and administrative team in the district to receive feedback and to get comments and to hear people's thoughts in a more direct and interactive manner than typically can occur at a Board of Education meeting. So I will start to my left and to your right for the people that are in the audience. First, it's Mrs. Val Schmid-Sadwin. Ms. Schmid-Sadwin works with us in our research and assessment office. She is the one that examines all of the enrollment, all of the numbers, deals with our testing, goes through the demographic studies that we have, everything that deals with the numbers and the enrollment. Mrs. Schmid-Sadwin is our expert. Next to Ms. Schmid-Sadwin is Mr. Guy. Mr. Guy is the principal at Rosa International Middle School. He was also a member. Mr. Guy and Ms. Schmid-Sadwin were both members of the redistricting committee that met during the course of the summer and throughout the fall. Then Mrs. Wethington. Mrs. Wethington is one of our assistant superintendents. She is the assistant superintendent for compliance, equity, and student services. Mrs. Wethington chaired the committee. I'm Joe Molash, and I'm the superintendent. And then to my right, to your left, on the other side of the table, is Miss Miriam Stern. Ms. Stern is one of our board members, and she serves as the vice president of the Board of Education. Next to her is Miss Sally Tong. Ms. Tong is another one of our board members. Next to her is Miss Rosie Arroyo. Ms. Arroyo is another one of our board members. And next to her is Miss Corinne Elmore Stratton, another one of our board members. So we thank you all for being here this evening. And we're going to start. Mrs. Wethington is going to deliver just a brief presentation just to make sure that everybody has similar information about where we are. I know that most of you have had the opportunity to go through, or many of you have had the opportunity to go through, look at the presentation that's been online, to view the board meeting from December 7th when the committee presented. But she's going to go through and just give a brief presentation so you can see where we are. Can you see it?
Thank you, Dr. Molash. Okay, so we can move on. All right. Yep. So just a recap, the board asked the committee to do a few things, to look at creative redistricting options, to equitably redistrict middle schools for the start of the 23-24 academic year, and to report their findings to the board by December 2021. So I will move straight into the options that the committee considered. There were 5 options. I will review each option separately. Option number 1. So for option one, Cooper, Hart, Sharp, and Stockton students would all attend Beck. Barton, Kilmer, Kingston, Payne students would attend Carusi. And Johnson, Knight, Mann, and Woodcrest students would attend Rosa. You will see that Rosa is in yellow because it's over the building capacity. The building capacity at Rosa is 806 students. This projected enrollment would be 813 students. In the first presentation, we neglected to address special education. We're going to have a second town hall just to address special education, but just for informational purposes. The lower enrollment at Beck would allow the district to increase special education programming at Beck. However, the enrollment at Rosa would be a challenge with our current special ed programming. So for option two, Cooper, Hart, Sharp, and Stockton would attend Beck. Barton, Kilmer, Kingston, Knight, and Payne would attend Carusi. And Johnson, Mann, and Woodcrest would attend Rosa. You can see there are no yellow highlights, so no building is over building capacity. This would allow us to increase or maintain special ed programming at Rosa very easily because they're under building capacity, and the same thing at Beck. So for option three, Cooper, Hart, Kingston, Sharp, and Stockton would attend Beck. Barton, Kilmer, Knight, and Payne would attend Carusi, and Johnson, Mann, and Woodcrest would attend Rosa. Again, you'll see that Rosa's building capacity is 806. Their projected enrollment is much lower, so we would be able to address special education programs very easily there. We would also be able to do that at Carusi. It would be a challenge at Beck because they're so close to building capacity at 951. So option four would be a sixth grade center. So grades 7 and 8 from Cooper, Hart, Johnson, Mann, Sharp, Stockton, and Woodcrest would all attend Beck. 7th and 8th graders from Barton, Kilmer, Kingston, Knight, and Payne would all attend Carusi. And then Rosa would have a building of 6th graders. You will see that Rosa would be over building capacity, which would be a challenge. We would like to implement special ed programs of every type if we were to have a 6th grade center, and that would be a challenge to implementation. And then option 5, at Beck, Cooper, Hart, Sharp, and Stockton. At Carusi, Barton would be split. Students who are north of Route 70 would attend Carusi. Kilmer, Kingston, Knight, and Payne students would also attend Carusi. At Rosa, Barton students south of Route 70 would attend Rosa, along with Johnson, Mann, and Woodcrest. You would see in this option, Rosa is still below their building capacity, so our special education programming would be pretty seamless. The same for Beck. Carusi's enrollment in this option is much higher than the enrollment at Beck and at Rosa. So the committee reviewed all 5 options and then recommended options 4 and options 5 to the board for their consideration. So we also posted a thought exchange. I think we had it available for 6 weeks. We had lots of feedback, and you can just see some of the themes: grandfather, transition, redistricting, split, children, current, some of the most common terms that were used by respondents as they responded to the thought exchange. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a special education parent town hall that will be virtual on February 3rd. And the board is tentatively scheduled to make a decision about redistricting in February. The board will advise if that will continue to be their plan of action.
Thank you, Mrs. Swethington. And just a little bit of background. So the nexus of the committee was formed during the course of the summer based on a charge that was presented by the Board of Education to the administrative team. the discussion about the makeup of the middle schools goes back some time in Cherry Hill. In the discussion that was occurring last spring and then into the summer, you're saying the charge that was presented by the board was to take a look at the middle schools and to come up with plans to redistrict, to reorganize them so that they were, for lack of a better term, neighborhood schools. So we no longer had a magnet school, and kind of relooked at how that was done. The last time in Cherry Hill that there were 3 neighborhood junior highs was actually back in the mid 1980s. So the committee was charged with taking a look at all the information, being creative and what they could come up with what they looked at, looking at a balance between enrollment and then between the makeup of the students who attended the schools. What would the student body look like? Who would be there? Who would be the children that would be in that school? And then worked out the timeframe that the committee met, and then the presentation to the board in December, and then the ongoing discussions. As Mrs. Wethington said, the discussion will take place tonight. There's one that's scheduled for next Thursday evening, which is 7 to 8:30. Will be all on Zoom on February 3rd. We're encouraging parents or folks, families with children who have an IEP or a 504 to participate in that discussion. We will focus the discussion primarily on special ed and 504 that evening. And we expect that there'll be a discussion with the full board on Tuesday evening, February 8th, at the next regular Board of Education meeting. I also want to thank some other people that are in the room tonight who will be serving as resources for us. The other 2 middle school principals are in the room with us, Dr. Birdie from Carusi Middle School and Mr. Augie Ramos, who's the acting principal over at Beck Middle School. They're both here to provide support. Mrs. Linda King, who's our Director of Transportation, is here. Transportation has always been one of those topics that comes up when we talk about the districting of students and what it looks like in Cherry Hill. So thank you, Mrs. King, for being here. Over at the side table, we have 2 folks from our technology department and our Director of Operations, Mr. Bart. Mark Levinsky and Marcus Holman from technology are both here, and Mr. Bart, the Director of Operations. These 3 honestly are the stalwarts. They keep the electronic part of our meetings going, whether it's regular board meetings, the town halls. They are always here to make sure that we are online and we are prepared. And then Mrs. Wilson, Barbara Wilson, our Public Information Officer, is here with us this evening as well. So this is how we're going to run the format. This is what we're going to do. We expect that people are online that are with us through the Zoom call. And there are people that are here in the room. There's a microphone that is set up in the center of the room, up close, closer to the table where the panel is seated. If you would like to speak, we encourage you to come up to the microphone. You can line up. I don't expect there'll be a mad dash for everybody. We always like to allow students to speak first, whether they're in person or online. Students have homework. Those of us that are adults, a little more flexible. So if there are students in the room or online, we encourage them to put their hands up or to come to the microphone first. And now I'm excited to turn it over to Ms. Stern, who's going to moderate, and call on the people to speak and to participate. And then we'll have people, if there's need for response, we'll share the microphones with the administrative team and with the board members. And we're going to take lots of notes. So I appreciate y'all being here. And Ms. Stern, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Molash. And just want to thank everyone for being here on this side of the room, to all the administrators and the support and all the staff folks. And definitely want to thank my fellow board members, Sally, Rosie, and Corinne. We are the max number of board members we can be at a meeting without being an official quorum. So it's kind of nice to have so many of us here. So thank you. But most importantly, I want to thank everyone who came out tonight. It's a really cold winter night. There's students here, so it's really, really appreciate everybody. And we have, I think, more people online than I've ever seen online at a meeting before. So that's also really exciting. That's exactly what we were hoping for, as much participation as possible. This is just the most important part of the process at this point, is to get participation. So we started this process about a year ago. We actually, some of you may have been there or called in. We had a town hall back then. And that was just to discuss the idea of middle school redistricting and kind of see where the community was at. And we had a lot of agreement, a lot of support for the idea that it was time to change the process that we had had for our middle school, specifically having Rosa be a different way of entering middle school. And many families agreed that it was time to make a change. So here we are. And a year later, we have another town hall. So, the district worked really hard under Mrs. Wethington to come up with a first draft of 5 suggested ways for the board to consider how to move forward with reconfiguration. So now we're circling back with those. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're circling back to you, the community, to hear your thoughts on all 5, or perhaps option 6, 7, 8, or 22. We'll have to see where this goes. So as you saw from the thought exchange, we had a lot of input. We had 750 community members give input on the recent thought exchange. Again, a very high participation rate. So far, we've heard a lot of voices and many strong voices, particularly about having middle school students stay put and finish wherever they start when we start the reconfiguration. And we definitely have heard that loud and clear. We are here to hear that, as well as any other input that you have to give tonight. We know that, there are so many different ideas, thoughts, perspectives, and we just look forward to hearing all of them tonight. So we're here to listen, and we are hopefully here to respond in a different way, as Dr. Molash said, from what we are able to do in our board meetings. And we'll do our best to answer your questions. And hopefully we will be walking away with a lot more information to share back to the full board as we move through this process. So thank you. Let's begin. This is my first time running it. Being in this role is so just like last night was 4.5 hours. It was a little rough last night with Ben leading the meeting. Now it's a little rough with me. So yeah, thanks. We're going to start with the audience. If there are any students, we would welcome you to come up if you would like, if you feel comfortable coming up first. And then we'll go back and forth between students and online, students in person, students online, and then move to the adults in person and adults online. If you would just state your name, do we need the locality or we don't need just your first name, please? Thank you.
Okay.
And move it down if you want. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sofia Gaudio, and I'm a 6th grade student at Rosa International Middle School. I just want to address my concerns about the potential change to the Rosa Raptor family. When this change goes into effect, my fellow 6th grade classmates and I will be in 8th grade, meaning that we might be separated and not be able to graduate together. Those of us who attend Rosa feel like a family because Rosa is smaller than the other middle schools. Plus, all of us felt strongly about wanting to go to Rosa, so that is why we entered the lottery to begin with. Those of us who are currently in 6th grade lost out on our 2 last years in elementary school due to COVID shutdowns and remote school most of the last 2 years. Though COVID is still here, we have been able to regain that family feel, and we would have been together for 2 years and then separated and forced to graduate without most of our friends. Imagine how hard that will feel for us moving into a new school just before you graduate 8th grade and then again the very next year for high school. I'm just asking you to please choose one of the options that will not separate the current Rosa students when the change takes effect. Thank you for letting me speak about my concerns.
Thank you. Great job. And see if we have any students online. I'm not sure how I would be sure. Some of the names I know are adult names, but adults I've seen. So we don't have any, doesn't look like we have any students online. So we're going to go to Orit Ben-Ari. And I don't know.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I wasn't sure if you could hear me. First of all, thank you all for being here and having this town hall. I think it means a lot to the community to know that our voices are able to be heard and hopefully taken into consideration. My children are currently in 5th and 6th grade. And to be completely honest, since they attended Bret Hart, most of the options do not affect them as far as moving schools, since all of the options will zone them for Beck. That being said, I agree with Ms. Gaudio that the hard part would be to separate students that would be in 7th and 8th grade when this took place, that they would have to be moved to a different school for either 1 year or 2 years. I think that we focus so much in this district on social emotional learning. And I think that that could really be detrimental to those students after forging those relationships. I think the same for sixth grade centers. As a very hands-on parent, I do see a benefit to having a sixth grade center for the same reasons, for social emotional reasons. I think that the kids could benefit from that, but the detriment I think actually outweighs the benefits because you would then have to move them again. And I think given the timing of this, that the kids, again, have just been through 2 really crazy years and another one this year that is kind of thankfully a little bit better, but it's still in the middle of, a pandemic. I think that the consistency is really key. So I guess in a few years from now, there probably would be people that would feel differently. But I think given the circumstances, I think that making a sixth grade center would actually be less beneficial than having all 3 middle schools for all 3 grades. And then lastly, I guess my question is with option 5, of all of the options presented, I hope you don't get 22 more options because that's certainly possible in our community. But I guess my question is, again, my kids are unaffected because they went to Bret Hart, but I feel like option 2 was almost very similar to option 5, only you're not splitting up an elementary school. I think splitting up Barton is, to say, unfair almost. Those kids have grown up together. They've been together for, potentially 6 years. And then because of a street, to separate those 2 and move them into 2 different schools, I think is unnecessary, given that there were options that seem to be reasonable and accommodated for that. So that's it. And I wish you all good luck and a healthy rest of the season.
Thank you so much. And we'll go now to anyone in the audience. Again, if there's any students present, we would ask the students to go first if you are ready to do so. If not, okay, that's okay. If you wouldn't mind just sharing your name, please, and that's it.
My name is Nicholas Gaudio Sr. I came to speak mainly about my granddaughter. My granddaughter is extremely happy to be able to attend Rosa Middle School. And I'm hoping that her sister, who's in 3rd grade in Thomas Paine, would also be able to attend and graduate from Rosa. Children should be allowed to attend and graduate from any Cherry Hill school because their father and grandmother pay real estate taxes on 2 different houses. So I'm not saying that that's the reason, but I think anyone who goes to a Cherry Hill school should be allowed to go to any Cherry Hill school that they wish. And I know you have other reasons for wanting to change the curriculum or the feeder schools and so on, but I like the situation the way it is now. In fact, when I moved to Cherry Hill in 1986, I came only to Cherry Hill because of the people in Cherry Hill and the school district itself that was so interested in education. I myself am a former teacher. I taught 40 years in Philadelphia. And I saw the educational opportunities here and the education-minded people as well. And that's why I came here. I could have gotten a new house, not a house that was built in 1968. So I bought a house that was already 20 years old, and I had to fix it up and do all kinds of things. So it was nobody wants to hear that, but it's the truth. And I did it because I knew that this was an area where my son and my family would progress. And basically, that's the reason why I'm asking that you please keep Rosa the way it is. It's really a great place. And I see the kids, they're so into a school and they're so nice. And I hate to see them lose out with their friendships they just made, especially since this COVID has disrupted the education for 2 years. And this thing here, I hate this, the mask. I know you might not even be able to hear what I'm saying properly. I'm doing the best I can, but this is not the way it should be in Cherry Hill. The way it is, I don't know if the other schools need assistance in other ways. I would look into that if possible. And there's probably a lot of people here. I know a lot of educators who live in Cherry Hill who would not mind spending some time without pay to help out if there is a need. So just put a flyer out. A lot of people answer it, I think. And I'm hoping that my granddaughters both are able to graduate from Rosa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gaudio. Okay, we're going to go to, I'm not Lily. Okay. We see a Lily on the line. If Lily is a student, could you please unmute?
No, I'm not a student. I'm a parent.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask if you don't mind, Lily. I apologize. Then I am going to go to the next person online who I believe is an adult, which is listed as GML. If you could please unmute yourself, GML, and it's your turn to speak.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you. This is Jerry Lerman. So first, I do want to say that, as I'm learning about all of these options, I felt for many years that having a magnet school like Rosa, in my opinion, wasn't necessary. I think having 3 middle schools to have all equal opportunities is a great idea. So, I'm glad we're finally talking about this. I do like option 4. I just agree with the other person who talked about splitting up Barton via a street may cause some issues among the students. But my overall question, I'm not going to get into the details since I'm still digesting all this, is since we're in the middle or at the beginning of a bond referendum, how does the bond referendum and how does the redistricting kind of play together? Is it just chicken or the egg kind of thing? Because I don't know, what was it, option 4, option 5, where Rosa had an issue with the number of people that are allowed in the building. Wouldn't the bond referendum have to be passed first, so you know what you have to do to accommodate these redistricting? So I just want to understand how the redistricting and the bond referendum go together.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Lerman, for calling in this evening and for your question. They do go together in a sense. All of the discussion that took place within the committee and the data that they used based on where the enrollment was, again, is a snapshot in time. The plans that the committee came up with and the breakdown of where kids were to attend were based on current enrollments, where they took that data from, and what the current availability within the building, what that space was for students. People in the past, as an example, that's not ever going to come up and it's not going to happen. And people talked about, can you just do 2 middle schools? And sure, with a certain amount of money and adding lots of space, we could probably do 2 middle schools, or we could do 1 high school and we could put 5,000 kids together. None of that's going to happen in Cherry Hill, right? So the committee had to work within the parameters of what currently exists within those spaces. So when you look at the 1 enrollment for Rose, I think the projection was over by 7 students or 10 students or so, less than a dozen students. So they start to look at, all right, well, if we have construction that's going on in that building, the reallocation of space, an addition of a cafetorium, change in where music is, recapturing of classrooms, then what will that impact be, right? So those pieces would all fit in together. But none of the plans, involved a significant change in any of the overall size of the instructional space or instructional spaces that were not going to be done as a part of the referendum and part of the regular projects that were already planned.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Molash, for answering that. Next, we'll go to anybody in the audience who'd like to come up. Just please come to the microphone. And I think just state your name, please. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nick Gaudio, Jr. Rosa is the unifying school bridging East and West, providing motivation for kids from both sides of town to cross over and tear down the artificial borders. School choice creates happier and more successful students. I attended Carusi between 93 and 95, and I have nothing against Carusi. Just like Beck and Rosa, it's a great middle school. But Cherry Hill currently has the unique opportunity for students to pick the more appropriate school that fits their individual personalities. Just as Villanova may have been a good fit for me, but Lehigh or Drexel may have been a better fit for some of my engineering colleagues. Ending this school choice reintroduces an old-fashioned format of forcing kids to conform to a fixed style and atmosphere, disregarding their individuality and diversity. Furthermore, it reintroduces the good side, bad side stereotype and inequality through division in Cherry Hill, just as it was in the 80s and 90s when most of us here who attended school in Cherry Hill grew up. The Board of Ed is the deciding authority and has full jurisdiction and freedom to vote to reverse course and keep the effective current lottery in place, or at least delay this change another few years to better plan out this transition. Any change, if there is a change made, that does not grandfather current and next year's sixth graders disadvantages those specific students by disregarding their mental health and well-being, by pulling them out of their stable and comfortable atmosphere and environment and turning them into the new kids in an unfamiliar setting for a single year just before they need to transition to another new setting for high school. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the line to Margot. Oh, I'm sorry, Jessica. Thank you for putting the student there. Jessica, your turn.
Hi, my name is Jessica. I'm a student at East who had recently been at Rosa, and my main concern with specifically option 5 is putting all of the sixth graders at one school instead of diversifying the student population. Personally, at my experience at Rosa, I was involved in many extracurriculars and I got to become great friends with many upperclassmen, and I was able to look up to so many upperclassmen as role models. And even now at East, I'm still friends with these upperclassmen and I still look up to them as role models. So my fear is not only that sixth graders all being conformed to one school, they're not only going to be disabled to have friends and socialize with people older and with more experience, but there might be cliques and like popularity contests and that sort of like mental health, social health issue.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, we're going to go to anyone who'd like to come up to the mic. Please come up in the room.
Good evening. My name is Marissa Dudlick, and my son goes to Rosa. Sorry, I don't like public speaking. Okay, so I'll get over it in a second. So there's a couple concerns that I have for the sixth grade center. My son is in a few sports at Rosa. I think he greatly benefits from his relationships with upperclassmen, especially for sports. The 2 sports that he does, he's never played previously. So he's learning from his involvement in those sports. The other option 5 with 3 middle schools, I agree with the sentiment that we need neighborhood middle schools. I do think it's unfair to split one for Barton. I'm also from the Barkley Farm neighborhood. And so it seems like with all of the options, we're the only neighborhood that wouldn't go to a local school. And so in any of the options, my son would be affected. My 4th grade daughter would be affected. So it is upsetting because, the kids have gone through this pandemic. The parents have gone through this pandemic. It's been a very long couple of years. And to think about trying to, especially when she was talking, it made me cry. Thinking about having to do this again to like be strong for our children and make sure that they have close relationships and they can start all over. We've been doing this for 2 years and we're tired, as I'm sure teachers and principals are. This is a lot of work, and just to have to, we have really good kids, and to make them go through this again, it just breaks my heart. So I think when we've looked at the options, there is that option 1. There's a difference of 2 students for Rosa overflow. And so I would just like to, kindly ask the committee to look at that again, because it really is, to me, the most common sense. All the elementary schools would be going to a local middle school, and no elementary schools would be split. And so I like option one. So if you could just take a look at it again, because it really is, I think option one had 813 children at Rosa. The option 4, which was the 6th grade center, had 811. So it's only 2 students difference. So if you have to accommodate Rosa for a 6th grade center, just if it could just make more sense, where the neighborhoods are really just going to the neighborhood school. That's how it is in every other town. I just think that would make more sense. So thank you. Sorry.
Thank you so much for braving the microphone. Okay, we're going to go to, I still don't see any more students, so I'm going to go to Margot online.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I am going to be echoing some of what Marissa just shared. I am also a Barclay resident and Russell Knight Elementary School parent. My children are in 1st and 4th grade, and it had always been my intention to enter my children into a Rosa lottery. So understanding that that is not an opportunity, or likely will not be, I'm extremely disheartened to consider the possibility that my children will be bused to the farthest geographic elementary school, the farther away geographic elementary school, and attend Carusi. I myself am a Carusi alumna, an alumna of both Carusi and Cherry Hill West. So like Mr. Gaudio Jr., who spoke and said favorable things, of course, about the schools within our district. This is not to disparage against Carusi, but really to look at, as we have been talking this evening, the social and emotional well-being of our students, in my case, my children, who I don't want to see spending an inordinate amount of time on buses. I also know, as I'm sure many parents are aware, that busing and transportation issues are pervasive now, in part connected to the pandemic. But I routinely receive emails and announcements about bus delays, really across all of our grade levels, I hear, in town, from the elementary schools that I receive communication from, all the way up through the middle schools and high schools. I also routinely hear of students who are running late because a bus didn't come to pick them up. I read this on social media. I hear it from other parents who then have to scramble to get their kids to school or get a neighbor to help their student be transported to school. And I really wonder and worry what that would look like if I'm a single working parent, and I know that there are many other people in my situation or households where there are 2 working parents, and there isn't someone readily available to transport a child to school, and perhaps a family member or a neighbor has to assist. This is just one of the many reasons why I believe closest geographic neighborhood schools make the most sense for all of our schools. Like Marissa, I'm feeling very singled out as a Barclay Russell Knight Elementary parent. And what we're discussing is so contrary to what the expectation had been over the past few years. I also would like to just put it out there that while we're talking about social and emotional health and well-being of students, I hope that teachers have been consulted. And not just in terms of serving on a committee, but a broader survey, because our teachers really are the experts on their students, on their particular ages and grade levels. And I would like to know that our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade educators have been consulted and have had an opportunity to have their voices heard in terms of what they believe would best serve their students and their school communities. I also, again, in echoing what Marissa had just shared, would like again to highlight the importance of revisiting option number 1 for the fairness to all of our elementary schools, so that every school has an opportunity to feel like they are being placed at their closest neighborhood school and not shunted across town or preparing their students for long bus rides before and after school, which, as I'm sure everyone knows, can impact the amount of sleep a student gets, the time that they have to get up to wait to catch a bus, and their ability to participate in certain extracurricular activities that may conflict with a busing schedule, particularly when there are transportation issues. I also want to point out that when we look at option 5, it's listed as no opportunities, none are listed on the SWOT analysis for 5. So I really want to question why we are exploring that. And then in closing, I saw the word cloud that was shared from the thought exchange, but again, as a Russell Knight stakeholder, for lack of a better word, parent, I don't necessarily agree with what was represented. And I saw this as a pervasive issue with the word cloud from the thought exchange, that topics that were not the most talked about or the most occurring were given, a higher ranking or a larger font size, elevating the visibility of those items. Whereas other issues, such as those impacting Russell Knight, were kept further down on the screen in a smaller font size. So I just want to call attention to that and make sure that everyone's aware that, even though it was great to have an opportunity to get our thoughts out there, what was communicated wasn't necessarily completely accurate or transparent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Margot. Dr. Molash, I know we do have a bar graph that is data. It's not, it's a different representation of all the input. Is there a way to put that on the screen? I don't mean to put you on the spot about that, but I'm just thinking that's really helpful. So, oh, great.
Mrs. Wethington's going to
Thanks.
pull
So
it
just,
up.
thank
I
you.
can tell you that the word cloud is developed by the system. It's an algorithm within Thought Exchange that is purely based on the number of occurrences of a word. That's not something that that we produce. That's done something with the AI that comes through the software. That's where that piece comes from.
So we need better tech AI developers to make sure that our AI is accurate.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a,
my sense of humor, Dr.
yeah, I mean, the numbers are the numbers, right? I mean, that's what,
right.
when you look at it in terms of, the number of thoughts and what the ranking looks like and, and that kind of stuff that, that's where that piece comes from.
It's always my
Yes.
plug for
Yeah, will
STEM in
you,
this district.
Yeah, if you pull up.
And is this thought exchange, is it available on the website right now? I know it's.
We have not, the presentation is up. The presentation that we delivered last evening at the board meeting is on. It's linked from the homepage under the news item.
Thank you. So that way the community can also see what we've all seen.
Right.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. That's great.
So this is the bar graph, I think that you were talking about, Ms. Stern.
Yeah.
The one that we went through last evening. Thank you, Mrs. Wethington, for pulling it. Yeah, so this went through with the rankings of, again, the information by topics, right? So the first one, the thing that was discussed or came up more often than anything else was no sixth grade center. And then the second one, current middle school students to finish at their school, right, where they are. There was a piece about, curriculum and activities, a piece about teachers, the stability and mental health, equity among what was being done, impact special education, transportation. The next one was about proximity and location, being unfair to Barton families, consistency in option 1, unthemed, right, which is where the AI could not place it in a specific category, reinstating the Rosa selection process, yes to option 5, and a yes to a sixth grade center, right? So these were the top themed areas that came through, again, based on the frequency and based on the ratings that took place. And we, like I said, we rely on the software. It's the reason that this system goes through. Ms. Wilson? Unfair to Barton / thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Unfair to Barton / Russell Knight families. Very good. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Ms. Wethington.
Thank you. That's helpful to be able to see, again, the 750 people who took the survey. That's where everything landed. So that's really great. Thank you for doing that, putting that up. Okay, back to a student. Yes, occurrence. Okay, we're gonna have it. I think we're gonna have the student first. Thank you. Thank you. I was thrown off by your college shirt. I thought that you might be a college student.
No, it's my dad's. Hi, I'm a student here at Rosa, as Zarj is saying. I'm in 6th grade, and I think that what this is going on, this is very wrong. I love being at Rosa. I've made family here. I've made friends. I've only been here for a few months, but I really love it, and I can't imagine just being forced to be at another middle school. This middle school, what Rosa has that I feel like is just so important to me is the fact that every principal, everyone here, every teacher, every colleague, everyone makes everyone feel appreciated, no matter who you are, no matter what gender or who, no matter who you are, everyone loves you for who you are. And I don't want to lose on that opportunity of the great thing that we have here at Rosa, as well as I've made friends. I've just beyond friends, as in classmates. I don't have anyone that I dislike at Rosa. There is absolutely no one, because everyone there is just so true and kind to heart. The education here, it's beautiful. We learn about things that we're actually excited to learn about, and we joke about the things that make us funny and make us, have fun here. And everything here at Rosa, I don't want to give that away. And it's not just me, it's all my other friends too. We love Rosa. We don't want to switch middle schools or be forced to. I feel that every child, every middle schooler, every elementary school, everyone should have the idea of what middle school or what school they want to go to. And being forced to move out of Rosa, if that passes, then how are me and my friends and all of the classmates and all of the people generally at Rosa going to stay in touch? I had a best friend move to Beck. Not move, but she went to Beck. And now that she wasn't accepted into Rosa, she didn't try out. She didn't try to get in by the lottery system because her parents thought she would do better at Beck. That's the thing. It's always up to what the parents think. But what about the kids? What about what we think? What about what we choose? I understand that everyone knows that adults know best, but sometimes it's better to let the kids choose on what they want. Being forced into doing something that we don't want to do, how is that equal? How is that free? How is that anything that I've ever experienced? Just anyone's ever experienced. We don't want to move. And I think I speak for all my friends. I don't want to move. No one wants to move. And if you want to move, then you can. It's always open. It's always an option, but I don't feel that we should be forced into doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zarsane. I just want to say two things back to you. First of all, student voice is very important to the board and the administration. And that's actually why we offer for you guys to go first, because we do, there's a lot of efforts to meet with the students and get student feedback. And we've had thought exchanges in the past that the students were answering. So I just want you to know that's really important to us. I also want you to know that this is a beginning topic. There's nothing in the actual plan that says, therefore, we will move all the current students. There's nothing that says that. So I just want to clarify that to you. This is an open discussion and we're really just kind of hearing everything. And then February 8th, when we start to have more conversations after both town halls and the thought exchanges, you'll start to hear us weighing in a little more about, what do we think makes more sense? But we don't want to take away from everyone's voice. So we're really just listening tonight. So thank you so much for expressing yourself. Okay, we're going to go to, I think Jason Gallagher I don't see any students. So I don't think that's Marissa on the line calling in. So I think it's Jason Gallagher's next.
Thank you. I admit that I'm not a student. I am a parent of a Beck student and a Sharp one. We won't really be affected by any of these plans except for the 6th grade one. So I don't have a preference regarding zoning, though I do empathize with the parents who are concerned about some of the schools being split in some of the plans. I do like the idea of removing the lottery, but I really don't like the idea of the 6th grade center. And what I would ask the board to do is to ask and explore data for what the extra disruption of going from 5th to 6th to a new school and then to 7th and 8th grade would do for the kids. Honestly, I don't know the data on that, but that's the degree of social adjustment that it seems to require. Seems like it might be disrupting the education as much as anything else. And sort of ironically, hearing the anxieties of some of the students, being concerned that they won't be grandfathered, kind of makes me think about that transition occurring one extra time with a 6th grade center compared to if that is not utilized. I'll be brief. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, any other students in here who'd like to speak?
Hello. My name is Sarah Less, and I'm a 6th grader at Rosa Middle School. And I'm one of a few friends that decided that we wanted to enter the Rosa lottery and try to make our way in there, even if none of our other friends got in. And it was just me and a few other friends, and we all happily got accepted. And even though I've only spent a few months in there, I've made strong friendships that I don't want to lose. And I don't feel like it's fair that we have to go and end our friendships when my friendships with these people are from the East and I live in a different neighborhood. So we would be going to different middle schools and we've gotten really close. And even though I only have a few friends, I'm really happy and I don't feel like I'm ready to leave Rosa yet, even though it might be for like another year or two. But I don't feel like that it's completely all that fair for us to move. Plus, we're going to be needing to we're going to have to change schools to get into like 8th grade. And then we're going to need to change all one more time. So we'll basically be the new kid twice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate your input. Okay, we're going to go to Kristen Viglietta on the line.
Hi there, good evening. Just a couple of things that I wanted to say. Mr. I appreciate you saying that just because these are the options, it doesn't mean that kids won't be allowed to finish where they started. But conversely, you guys haven't said that kids will be allowed to finish where they start. So I think that's part of the emotion and what's making people be upset. Secondly, I did just want to read, I read a comment at the board meeting last night, and I just wanted to read a snippet of it. So Mrs. Wethington and members of the district committee presented at the December zone PTA meeting. I asked the following at that meeting. I am a person who looks for data when making decisions. Show me the appropriate data and I will get on board with a well-supported option. Has the district found any data saying that a 6th grade center in a district of our size, where kids are brought together for 1 year and then dispersed for the remainder of middle school, is a best practice or is even educationally appropriate? The answer that was given to the zone PTA table was that the district asked this to the folks who do research for Cherry Hill, and they could find no data. That in and of itself, for me personally, speaks volumes. Something that I'm wondering if you guys can consider. The district goal is that you have the elementary and middle school redistricting done by the end of this calendar year. Is it possible, seeing as the lottery information has gone out to current 5th graders, that you guys can solve the question, is it going to be a 6th grade center or is it going to be a 6th through 8th grade building? Let those families in 5th grade know so that they know what their kids are walking into going into 6th grade. Solve for elementary, solve for middle by the end of the year, but at least families would have that information. Additionally, it is phenomenal to hear these sixth graders speaking. It's, I mean, like moving me to tears. I do want to point out that while these Rosa sixth graders are doing a phenomenal job, that if kids are not allowed to finish, not only will it affect the Rosa sixth graders, but it will affect Beck and Carusi's then sixth and seventh graders, in that some of those kids would move. And if your student isn't moving, your students' friends could be moving. So it does impact not just the Rosa students. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just to respond quickly, to reiterate, I guess just to say, we just truly are in a listening mode and have not made any statements or decisions about where we're at, and that will be coming. And part of our discussion may or may not have decisions, but we'll definitely be having more kind of board input on February 8th. And then I don't know if it's possible to get maybe a little more insight into the idea behind the sixth grade center, because I know I've kind of gotten a chance to hear a little more about maybe the benefits that I'm not sure is why this idea has come up again. Just so I feel like would help a little bit in the ideas behind it.
Sure. So in following up with the committee, the notion of the sixth grade center, and Ms. Figlietta is correct. They asked, there is not a body of research that talks about it. One of the difficult things when you talk about educational research is finding research that shows direct cause and effect. The majority of research that's done in education is what we refer to as being correlative. It's related. Something happens, and at the same time, something else happens. But they're very rarely can you prove that there's a catalyst that one causes the other to take place, but they occur at the same time. So that's true. There's not a body of work that talks about a district our size that has a sixth grade center in that same way. That's absolutely correct. So when the committee met and talked about the sixth grade center, there were a number of things that were attractive as they discussed it, and came up with it, which is why they put it forward. In our community, which is unique, we're the 12th largest school district in the state of New Jersey. And we do have children that travel to 3 different middle schools and then on to 2 high schools after they've come out of 12 elementaries. So the notion of a sixth grade center takes all the children from all 12 elementaries and places them all together. What a truly unifying way that the committee discussed to have all of the kids, right? Kind of break down those barriers that it doesn't matter if you went to Stockton or Payne or Kingston or Woodcrest or Man, now we are all students at this school. There's also a level setting in terms of introduction to that next level in mathematics and in science, and that transition from the elementary or the primary school to prepare truly for secondary school, right? Which would be that 7th grade, moving on into 8th grade and that kind of thing. There's an impact even in extracurriculars, right? There's a great opportunity when kids can learn from one another, when they have older kids, but there's also an opportunity when more kids can be participatory. When you talk about some of the sports where there are fewer children that are able, or athletes or student athletes that are able to compete at a time, in basketball, you can only place 5 players on the court at a time. So they're only going to carry so many kids on an A team and on a B team, which thankfully, through the board support, we were able to reintroduce B teams a couple of years ago. The notion of a sixth grade center allows for a robust program of intramurals where more children can participate, more children can have experience, more children can do the sampling of different types of sports that they may not have played before. The sixth grade specific things such as Mount Misery and the environmental education and all of that kind of stuff would truly be focused in that area. So that's where those were some of the reasons behind it. When you look at schools, there's no research that'll tell you this is the right way to organize schools. There's nothing that'll say this is that you have to do kindergarten through 5th grade or kindergarten through 6th grade or kindergarten through 8th grade. The thing that communities, and this is where the local control comes in, the notion of local control in public education, there are 2 things, honestly, that determine how schools are organized in communities: space and money. And often if you have more money, you can create more space. There are different ways that things are done. There are different practices that are used, but there is no one way, there is no right way In New Jersey with our 600+ school districts, certainly has lots of examples of how schools are, districts are organized depending upon their size. So that's the reason why, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is a model, that has existed for us in Cherry Hill since, the late 1990s, really got into full swing with everybody participating in the early 2000s. It was a new model, right? A new thought, new process about how we were going to organize and why. What was the reason they wanted to have the 6th graders out of the elementary schools, move them to the middle schools, that kind of thing. The other thing that, and again, Ms. Schmidt-Sadwin and her expertise with the numbers that we look at is Cherry Hill historically has gone through 20-year cycles of enrollment, where the school age population has been high as it was in the 1970s. Then by the early 1990s, it had dropped back down, and then it starts to come back up again. And, there's those peaks and troughs that exist, which happens in communities our size. As you see newer families coming in, and a couple of the parents talked about, living in the Barclay neighborhood, children are at Russell Knight. The number of families that have been moving in and the number of children that are in the Barclay community has exploded over the last few years. The Woodcrest community has continued to grow with families as homes have turned over. So all of these were different factors that went in, but that kind of is what fed into the notion of the 6th grade center and the opportunities that exist.
Thank you for sharing, that more in-depth information. It's good to be able to share that out. Okay, any more students who are ready to brave the microphone? Okay. All right, then we will go to the next adult who would like to brave the microphone.
Hi, I'm Kelly Gasly. I know, Ms. Stern, that you said you all are here to listen, but I was actually here to listen to you all a little bit. And I have just actually one question. I know you've heard a ton of concern from the community over whether students can finish at the school where they've started. And it hasn't just been asked tonight, it's been asked at many, many meetings. It was all over the thought exchange. And I think a lot of us are super concerned that there has been absolutely nothing stated about whether or not that is being considered. And so I would like to ask tonight, is that being considered that students may not be able to finish the middle school where they've started?
So I just kind of speak on behalf of the board because ultimately this is a board decision. I certainly would say that all the board members probably have our own thoughts about it. I think that many of us right now have students in schools who've experienced the same disruptions that your students have all experienced, the same social emotional learning challenges. So I just want to say that, I think we have our opinions. I think we quite honestly, under the leadership of our new board president, his charges look like it's disingenuous to start stating opinions and start voting on things before we've had true community input. So that's really why there hasn't been any statement from the board or vote from the board. But we understand it's a very pressing issue. We also, are hearing that thought exchange I'm sorry, 6th grade centers is a pretty significant issue. And those are the kind of the two that are rising so much to the surface that we want to make sure that we're listening to all that, but it also doesn't crowd the field for other ideas. But, I think we're hearing pretty clearly that the community needs to know what's going to happen with that. And I'm really hopeful that on February 8th, we will able to have that, after hearing everything, then have a true, discussion. And then I'm hopeful we can come to some clarity for the community about where we stand as we move forward. And, we may perhaps come to some bigger decisions altogether in February. We might need a little more time regarding, the redistricting process in general, but ultimately, we definitely know that those are like kind of two pressing topics that probably need to be prioritized to be discussed and made some clarifications where we stand at that point. So it's probably not a very satisfying answer for you, but it's definitely, it's not that we haven't, individually have our own thoughts or have, two of us have a conversation about it. So certainly has happened.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Wilson's just waving. It's just a time check.
I thought she was cutting me off.
No, we were at about 5 minutes after 8, just to keep in the scheme of where we are progressing. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to Gule Uritan, please, on the line.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I will be quick. I have a daughter in 4th grade. I think all of Cherry Hill Middle Schools are great. I do agree with that option 4 has some benefits, but I think the issues outweigh the benefits. I think one of the most important thing is consistency for the kids and stability. When they graduate from elementary school, they will already be moving to a new school with new teachers, new building, new friends. And just 1 year later, they have to go through that process again. So I think it's, and they're in the middle of going through puberty. It's already, hard for them. So I think stability is very important at that, I mean, at any age, but, especially for middle school kids. I also agree that, I'm hearing a lot of concerns with Rosa kids. So, if they started out there, I think they should continue there if it's possible. Again, consistency and stability for those kids. I'm also very happy that we don't have this lottery. I mean, that's one of the things that's coming out of this, because, when it's lottery, there's winners and losers. So I'm happy that, that won't be happening with these options. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, an audience member, whether a student or an adult, just please feel free to come up to the microphone. You can even, if you'd like to line up, you're welcome to line up, however you'd like to proceed.
Hello again. Beth Becker, Cherry Hill. Okay, so Kristen Viglietta and I shared this petition with you yesterday that we circulated to advocate for all 3 middle schools to be 6th through 8th and for all students to be allowed to finish their middle school tenure at the school in which they started. That petition is currently at 870 signatures as of the last time I could get Wi-Fi. There's, as Dr. Molash has said, there's really no evidence that 6th grade centers have any educational or social emotional benefit, especially in a district as large as ours, where the school will be completely isolated. So in some other districts, there is a 6th grade center, but it's kind of on the same campus. And again, our students would be split again. So in other places where there is a 6th grade center, the 6th grade students all move up together to the next school. Our students would be split again. My husband's a my husband is a special education attorney, and he's seen nothing but negative impact to his clients from 6th grade centers that his clients have gone to. Moving all students once the new middle school plan is in place is also detrimental to all students. Students from all 3 middle schools would be displaced and moved to a new school, ostensibly creating a 1-year school for current 5th and 6th graders who would either have 1 year in 6th grade or 1 year in 8th grade in a new school. So again, all 3 middle schools would be affected. I'm so impressed with Zarish, Sarah, and Sofia who spoke tonight. And I know students at Beck and Carusi who feel just as passionately about their schools. In both a 6th grade center and moving students to a new building, you're sending children to a 1-year school. We're talking about increased busing, extra transitions. I don't see how there'd be much student or parent ownership of a school that students are only in for 1 year. Lack of a student who called in talked about lack of upper class students examples. The transition issue is especially damaging for students with 504s and IEPs who also have to be comfortable with new therapists for the services they need just to be switched again the next year. And I reiterate what Kristen Viglietta said about please let 5th grade parents know now what they're signing up for before those applications are due. Many Beck and Carusi students would have chosen Rosa if they knew they'd be moved there anyway in 7th and 8th grade, and many current Rosa students would have chosen not to attend had they knew they were going to be moved. Another thing I wanted to ask was how much was there teacher involvement in the redistricting plan? Also, I completely understand why there's redistricting. I do think that the lottery has created a lot of divisiveness between parents and even between students, because the students hear what the parents are saying about things, and there's all these different rumors about what school does what better, and and it creates a lot of animosity. And I sometimes even hear it between kids, just like saying things. I'm not going to repeat any of it, but I can email you if you want. Nothing, horrible, but just things that reinforce this idea. As for the East-West divide, I went to Beck with all students from, we only had 2 middle schools. I went to East with all students from the East side, and I had some very, very close friends on the West side. Shout out to the music and theater programs that brought us all together. And I had very, very close friends at West. So I think there are other ways to foster that relationship between East and West, rather than disrupting a whole class of students. Oh, and one more thing is, I didn't notice this before, but when Ms. Wethington put the slides up again, that Rosa is in the 6th grade center plan, Rosa is already at or slightly above capacity, I believe. And that is not taking into account the fact that every special ed program would have to be in one school. So I think that's a serious problem with that plan as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Molash, I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to teacher voice, because it's now come up a couple times in this process.
Yes. So in the process where we are right now, there have not been teachers involved in the planning of where it is. Again, because of the level of where the discussion and the charge from the board, it came as an administrative group that met to talk about it. Teachers would be involved, or teachers will be involved if and when changes are made to what it looks like with the organization of the schools, in the planning and the preparation and what that transition would look like, and those types of things. We also did not have parents or students on the committee, right? So this is until the board ultimately makes a decision about what direction that they want to go. Those other stakeholder groups would then be brought in at that point. But at this point, it's been that administrative group that met, and then the board, that now is engaging in the conversations. Oh, and just the Rosa, the applications to participate in the Rosa selection process. And we actually changed the policy. The board changed the policy a number of years ago to refer to it as a selection process. They did take the lottery out. Somebody mentioned because lotteries do have winners and losers, and there are no losers going to any middle schools in our district. So there is a selection process. The paperwork is due February the 25th. February the 25th is when that paperwork is due.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the next person on the line, who is listed as Thomas Payne. Maybe someone who.
Hi, no, sorry, it's Teresa Field Bobrowski. I think I'm still logged in my Thomas Payne account there.
No worries, thank you.
Sorry about that. I am a mom of 2 students over at Thomas Payne, one who's in 5th grade and one who is in 2nd grade. And actually, just the mere point of the February 25th deadline for the Rosa applications is actually problematic, because we don't have in any of these options any kind of transition potentially outlined. And there's transition with all of this, with whatever option that we go with. And without transition, how can those of us who do need to make a determination by February 25th make a decision? We don't have the information available in order to have the discussion with our child to determine if that's something that we can do as to how it may affect them. And this is the last year for that selection process. And effectively, if their decision is that after they're done there for 6th grade, they have to leave when they thought that they were going to be there for the 3 years, that's problematic. And I did have just a few other things too, that, it effectively ends then really the selection process as of last year. Because as a parent, if I don't know what that transition is, or if that transition does look like that they would have to be forced to leave the school after 1 year, I'm probably not going to even attempt to put my son's name in for that. Essentially, it's really hard to select any of these options because, again, you don't have a transition plan. And I've heard in the past, it sounds something like, well, we can cross that bridge when we get there. Well, we're at the bridge. And if you don't have a transition plan, you effectively don't have any options on the table right now, because that's going to be the major impact, how these kids are all affected. And I would like to point out that if it is a 6th grade center, they're not there for a year. They're there from September to June. That's only 9 months of time. That's really a small amount of time for kids to be together, put them together, form strong bonds, and then break them apart. And I do think that that is very, very problematic. I did also find it interesting that within the PowerPoint slide deck, that the Rosa plant expansion is listed as a threat for option 1, but as an opportunity for option 4. It's one or the other. Either it's considered an opportunity to expand Rosa or it's not. And, I think that posing that as a threat kind of starts to take option 1 off the table. And yet at the same time, we have option 4 on the table. My concern as well is that if my child were to go to Carusi, which is where they would be assigned to with all of the different options outside of the option 4, is that, when you look at the numbers, Carusi could potentially have, with option 5, 300 more students compared to the other 2 middle schools. That's significant. And I do have a concern with the other options with the number of students that we're going to see there. Option 1 looks more equitable with how many kids will be in each of those schools. I understand that Carusi is the larger school out of the 3, but there's a problem there when you have over 1,000 kids in one school and potentially 700 in another. There's an issue with that. And the last thing I heard was that, when we were thinking about a 6th grade center was, 6th grade students could potentially just need some more love at that point in time in their lives. So do 8th graders, so do 7th graders, they all do. So to limit it to only a 6th grade, I just think is a little short-sighted because all of these kids, need extra love. And I think especially after everything that we've been through, that they could use that extra care from everybody. So those were just some of my thoughts and opinions on it. And, I'm definitely for the idea of keeping at least the middle schools where we at least have 3 grades in each, not doing the 6th grade center. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is somebody in the room who'd like to come? Just feel free to come up to the mic. And again, if you'd like to line up, you're welcome to line up. So you're ready to go. Up to you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Boyle. My eldest is a 5-year-old in Sharp, and I have 2 younger kids who go to school. I grew up in Cherry Hill, went to East. I came today to speak in opposition of option 4. I think I'll start with first and foremost who it impacts the most, the students. I think 3 schools in 3 years and 4 schools in 5 years is an incredibly difficult situation for any student. The transition, there's always going to be a learning loss in a transition. So you're going from 5th, 6th, 7th, another school, then in another 2 years, you're going to high school. So I think it's going to be very difficult for the students to adapt. Some students do better than others, but I think that's going to be very difficult for the students to go to one school for 1 year. That they don't have that sense of community. For a lot of students, it almost would feel, to me, almost like a punishment or a way station before you actually go to the middle school you're supposed to go to. And it also impacts, a lot of students have siblings, a year older, 2 grades older. There might be a kid who's a little reticent going to 6th grade at Beck or Carusi or Rosa. Well, guess what? They have an older sibling there, 7th grade or 8th grade. But if they're in 8th grade, they're not going to go to school together in 6th grade. So they're not going to have that comfort level of a sibling who, if they have some sort of issue with it, they're going to bring that to them. And I think bringing the kids together for a year, while I understand that it is an intriguing and a good thing for the kids from all over town to be together, you might form friendships that are going to dissipate because the geographic difficulties of school and extracurricular activities and other friends you have at your next school and then trying to maintain that relationship is going to be difficult. Because I'd have to imagine the first couple months you're going to be with the kids you went to elementary school with, you're comfortable, you're transitioning into the school, then you might make some friends, but you don't know if they're going to go to back with you or Carusi with you. And then all of a sudden the school year ends, someone mentioned it's only 9 months, and then all of a sudden you're not together. So I think the number of transitions is very difficult. Someone mentioned data. I read a paper today called Moving Matters. It actually recommended the fewer moves for a student is better for their education as far as schools. It actually recommended K-8 might be likely better. I am not recommending that. I understand that that's not on the table financially and for a number of other reasons. So, but I think the fewer moves that we could have for the students, the sense of ownership of a school that they go to matters to them, because now you're transitioning to say Beck or Rosa or Carusi in 6th grade, but now you're there. You're in the routine. You know, I'm a walker. I get a bus. This is what I'm doing for the next 2.5 years after you sort of adjust. Whereas with Rosa, it's very brief. All of a sudden, this winter break, and then you're getting ready. You know, summertime's around the corner, so to speak. And then the next part, teachers. You'd mentioned that they hadn't quite been involved yet. And growing up in the town, I have a lot of friends and family who teach in the district, and I've spoken to them about it. And there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, obviously there hasn't been anything laid out to them, but teachers, as much as the students and the parents are part of the community at the school, the teachers are too. Siblings tell you, oh, you want this teacher, this one's great. They're all great. Well, but this is a teacher you might want to have. That one's, this one's tough or something like that. And I don't know if the teachers would move schools or they would change what they would teach. I mean, obviously that's not decided or hasn't been laid out. But I know there's the uncertainty there with the teachers, I think, is another thing to weigh. And then lastly, parents. A lot of people move to the town with expectations of going to certain schools. They like the school itself. They like the community. They like the proximity, whether it's, why they have a job where they work from home, where they have to travel, and having a school where they can walk their kid to school or drop them off quickly is advantageous. Where, anyone going down Crescent Road during rush hour in the morning, if you don't live close to Rosa, that could be a little tricky. And my daughter and my other 2 sons would have to get on a bus. And, there's certainly the uncertainty of how many students is going to be on the bus. How long's the route? There's going to be traffic in the morning. There's going to be traffic coming home. Are they going to be in the bus for 30, 40 minutes? And I'm walking to the elementary school near my house to pick up my other 2 kids while I'm waiting for my eldest to get off the bus. And I don't know what time they're going to get home. So I think, that sort of uncertainty is difficult too for the parents, because rearranging your schedule for someone you thought your kid was going to walk to, middle school, or you could drop them off in 2 minutes, and now it's a half hour or 40 minutes, or you're racing to get home from work because you want to beat rush hour to get your kid from school or your extracurricular activity. So I think that's some of the 3 concerns that I have, the impacted parties, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to Steffi Graf on the line. I don't think any of these are students.
Hi, it's Stephanie. So I have, I graduated through Woodcrest Heritage, which was Rosa before it was Rosa and before it was closed, and then East. And then my kids have gone through Bret Hart, Beck, and East. And I guess a couple things. So first of all, I think regarding the 6th grade center, I absolutely hate the idea. I think the idea has come up because neighboring districts have 6th grade centers, but neighboring districts that have 6th grade centers, those kids stay together all the way throughout. They don't separate into different high schools. And so, that concept may make sense in a much smaller district. That this concept doesn't make any sense in our district where the kids are separated. I wish you guys could find a way to just make this go away. It would solve half of the anxiety that's going on in the district right now. Second thing is I can appreciate that people move to the neighborhood and want to go kind of where that is, and neighborhoods being split. I really wish we would look at kind of the neighborhoods at the elementary level before we make this decision. I live in Woodcrest. I can tell you 2 blocks away, I went to Hart, and 2 blocks away, the kids go to Woodcrest. So I totally get it. I grew up that way and went to Woodcrest and now live on the other side, and, kids went to Bret Hart. So, so I can appreciate that. I also think looking at straight numbers in those graphs is really not the most important thing, because quite frankly, it's really about what the school and the classrooms hold, right? So if you take Carusi and it's 200 people higher, or whatever that number is, those classrooms may be bigger. They may hold more people versus the classrooms at Rosa. So you can't just look at total number and go, it's 1,000 versus 800. That's not fair. I think it's about class size. So, if the class size needs to be around the same. And so I think that gets to the point of when the students come up and talk about, and they, I want my choice. I should be able to go where I want to go. You can't necessarily just go where you want to go, because you could have, 10 kids in a class at one school and 30 kids, 35 kids in a class at another school. So it is your job to make sure that kids are learning in similar environments that are similar size and getting the same experiences. So I said that about sixth grade. I do think that sixth grade center just disrupts everything. I think it disrupts, kids that have issues that are working with guidance counselors to make that transition to sixth grade, get to know someone for 9 months and move, makes absolutely no sense. Kids with special services, extracurricular activities, all those things, they don't make any sense to me for a sixth grade center. Too much disruption. I also think it is massively critical to allow current students to finish where they're at. It's too much change. I think if you can put that out to the community as soon as possible, that would calm a lot of nerves. And I think for the people that talk, the kids that get into Rosa, it's great. But I also think the kids are happy at, every school that they go to, for the most part. I think the stress of the lottery it was crazy. I mean, I was there. I watched as a PTA president sorry, not the lottery. Dr. Molash, you like a different term. The selection process. So the selection process, and my kids were on those years where there were 150 kids on a wait list, and watching that wait list go through and knowing that maybe they get to 20 or 30 in the summer, and watching that. For the kids that get in, that's great. For the kids that are the 150 on the wait list, it's a huge stressor, and that stressor starts in the beginning of 4th grade. It is a stress that these kids should not have to go through. So I guess I just wanted to say all of that. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Sorry, let me just say that just as a time check. I think so. Oh, there we are. Just as a time check, we are at about 8:25. We are scheduled to go until 9. What's that? 8:27. Thank you, Mrs. Wethington. We are scheduled to 9, so just to check in.
If people are able to keep the comments, what you think will happen, it'd be shorter, it'd be great. Just get everybody in.
All right, well, I'll do my best.
Thank you.
I'm Gabrielle Clark, Cherry Hill. I have a daughter at Rosa in the 6th grade. I wanted just to say that I would like the committee to actually go back and rethink how you're dividing up the township. All the options that were presented rely on the existing elementary sending districts. And those lines are drawn for whenever they were drawn. I don't know, I wasn't here, but they're not always very logical. Even when I bought my house in this district 3 years ago, we were zoned for Woodcrest. My daughter went to Bret Hart because physically, when you walk or ride your bike, it's faster and shorter to get to Bret Hart than it is to Woodcrest because of that one-way street. So the lines are not logical, and I would encourage the committee to go back and look what it looks like if you geographically divide up the township so that you do actually have neighborhood middle schools that are not based on elementary schools, but based on geography instead. I am interested in a neighborhood middle school and with the same curriculum at all 3 schools, which I'm a big fan of the fact that Rosa starts world language in the 6th grade already. But I am concerned about the busing situation and would like the busing times to be as minimal as possible. Diversity is important to me, but not at the expense of excessive busing, which also has some unintended consequences. The current middle school students, it's very important to me as well that the ones that are there now finish in the school where they started. And that may mean thinking outside the box a little bit to address capacity issues for a few years until the incoming students represent the new district lines. Other places put up portables and do other things like that while they're doing expansion plans or whatever to be able to accommodate the students that are supposed to be there, given that that will be some kind of a transition period until everybody's where they're supposed to be with the new lines. And then middle school, as we all know, is very turbulent, and our kids need some stability. My daughter's 12. We moved when she was 5 years old, 7 years old, and 9 years old to a new school, a new state, even a new country, and back again. So she knows how to adapt and she knows how to make new friends, but that was all during elementary school. So middle school is so different, and I think the stability is just so important. It's the time when the kids find their tribe. It's where they need to nurture their friendships, and those friendships, the ones that sustain them through the turbulent times, which is just part of the middle school experience, I think. I don't think that you can even avoid that, but that's how our kids learn to adapt. Already, because of the pandemic, their social interaction at school is still limited. It's not the normal experience that you have. You are limited with who you interact with. And I'm not at all in favor of having them to move in the 8th grade potentially, and then move again in the 9th grade. And quite frankly, the stability is not just for the students, it's for me and my family and other families. It takes a village to raise our kids. It really does. I've only lived in Cherry Hill for 3 years. 2 of those were during a pandemic. I feel very fortunate that I found friends through my daughter primarily that have similar approaches to parenting. They are my village. Those are the people that I count on to co-parent. They will go pick up my daughter whenever I need them to. If my daughter has to move in the middle of middle school and some of those people don't move with us, then I have to re-find more people along the same philosophy that I have about parenting. And that means that our social structures are torn apart again. And I have to find a new circle. So yes, it's for the students. It's all about the students, but it's also about the families that support our students so they can be the best that they can be.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to Alana Yaris on the line.
Hi, Alana Yaris, Cherry Hill. I just had one statement about 6th grade centers, but then I actually have a bunch of questions for the panel, which I know you've all eagerly been awaiting to answer some questions, I'm sure. My first statement on the 6th grade center is that although I think a 6th grade center is a good idea, I do not think it is a good idea for Cherry Hill, as we're such a large district, and once our 6th graders come together all across town, we would then split for 7th and 8th grade middle school and split again for high school. So in an ideal world, the 6th grade center would work in Cherry Hill if the middle schools and high school students were all together versus being split again and again. In that vein, though, has any thought been given to having middle school for 7th and 8th grade be open enrollment if there is a 6th grade center, so that students can choose where they want to go, apply with their friends that they make in the 6th grade center? Then my questions are there currently any elementary schools that split where some of the students go to Beck and some go to Carusi to account for the numbers issue that has been seen? A lot of thought has been given to option 5 and the Barton families being split, but I'm just wondering if there are currently any elementary schools that face this issue. If Rosa becomes a neighborhood middle school, will all students in the district who are zoned to Rosa be on buses? I know currently any student enrolled at Rosa is signed up for busing, and I know families can refuse it or they could drive their kids to school, but will Rosa still remain an all bus school? I know I've asked this question before, but I just wanted more clarification on looking at neighborhoods in town versus the elementary schools in town in terms of maybe the demographics are different based on the neighborhoods versus the schools itself. I know that's hard to figure out based on if families live in a specific neighborhood but send their kids to private school or homeschool and are not enrolled in the Cherry Hill system. Another question I have is, does passage of the bond impact Rosa in any way in terms of if the bond doesn't pass and Rosa is a middle school, either a 6th grade center or 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? I know there's currently no stage, and in the bond, there's a cafetorium in the plans. How will that affect the disparity between Rosa and the other middle schools? And finally, a thought on the thought exchange. When filling out the demographics, one of the choices, I believe it was for this thought exchange, but I could be wrong because I know there have been several. One of the first questions for the demographics is, how old is your youngest child? So that put me in the category of my youngest child is not yet enrolled in school. However, I fit into a lot of different categories, and I'm just wondering if there's a way for the demographics to change so that I can see the thoughts, or others in the community can see the thoughts of the other demographics, so that they can have an input on those demographics as well, since those demographics affect them. Although I don't have a high school student and I don't need to see the high school student, instead of a radio button, I would rather have a checkbox, if that makes sense. Okay, and that was all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know, Dr. Molash, if you want to take a stab at some of those.
Sure. There's some that I can definitely answer. And I'll start just working backwards. So the demographics in the thought exchange is just to give an overall picture. We can certainly talk about that, with the thought exchange folks for subsequent thought exchanges. I'm not sure whether a checklist is something that's available. We can certainly take a look at that. Does the passage of the bond impact Rosa in terms of doing the redistricting? It does not. The passage of the bond absolutely impacts Rosa in terms of all projects, but it was built, the alignment was built based on what the current enrollment capabilities are. Certainly will be ongoing discussions about neighborhoods and elementary schools. Yes, children that attend Rosa will still be assigned to buses. Every child that attends Rosa is a student who is assigned to a bus. Mrs. King, 8,600 kids in round numbers that we transport on a daily basis. What is it? No. How many? 7,906 is the number of kids that we bus on a daily basis. All the children that are assigned to Rosa are all busing students, and will continue to be busing students just based on the location and the property. Are any elementary schools currently split? There's a small pocket of students who attend Johnson, who have the opportunity to choose whether they attend Carusi or Beck, based on where they live. Right now, that's the only elementary school that is split. 7th and 8th grade, if there is a 6th grade center, can that be open enrollment? We can certainly keep that on a list if that discussion progresses, for sure.
I think just a question about neighborhood schools versus elementary-based middle schools is an ongoing topic, and it will be part of the board's discussion as we look at all the plans. Okay, on to the audience. Right back to the audience.
Hello, my name is Aram. I have a 6th grader. I think you heard her. She was pretty passionate about her opinion. I've moved to Cherry Hill a few years ago with both my kids being elementary. I have an 8th grader in Rosa and a 6th grader in Rosa. One of my 8th grader has an IEP, and he really flourished in Cherry Hill School District with the elementary schools, and now in Rosa. There is a lot that I don't understand, and there is a little that I understand about the presented options. But I would be very honest to say that it just seems like you've opened a Pandora's box at the worst possible time you could. Because just coming out of the pandemic with so many challenges that parents, teachers, educators have to deal with, this was not something that parents or teachers or students were expecting. When I look at the options, I'm only going to talk about how it affects my daughter right now, because there is, like I said, a lot that I don't understand. I do try to understand the point of view of other people, especially with the lottery and your stance with a lot of different things and options that you are trying to do. But in the way that you're doing with the sixth graders, I feel like that is going to spiral in a wrong direction, because like a lot of parents that mentioned, there has to be a transition time for this. Even if this is an idea, you have to sit on this and work a better plan to execute it, with giving a few years for parents to digest it, take it as an option, and then play along with it. Just telling the sixth graders that in eighth grade, they're going to have to transition again, and then transition again in ninth grade, causing a turmoil in parents and kids' lives is just, does not seem like a great idea to me. Obviously, there's many points that have already been brought about. I'm not going to talk about it again and take your time on those things, but I just feel that my sincere request is to let this be a smooth transition for the sixth graders. Let them complete on and finish off their eighth grade, and then, you know, giving it time to think about it, discuss it more, and then involve the teachers, because eventually the teachers are going to get affected with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to Mila on the line, the student.
Hi, I'm a sixth grader at Rosa, and I think that what's happening between all of the schools is wrong, because at Rosa, I have made so many friends that I'm not ready to leave. And I think that the students that are currently at Rosa in sixth grade should be able to stay until eighth grade. And that most of my friends will probably, like, I feel like everyone does not want to leave all their friends at Rosa and just leave everything behind at Rosa and go to a new middle school and be forced to be there, because I feel like the students should have a say in what happens.
Thank you, Mila. Okay, we're going to go to the room. Is anybody in the room?
Hi, my name's Michelle. We moved specifically to Cherry Hill for the school district and chose our community based off of the schools that were assigned to the community. I have to say I'm not thrilled with any of the options provided or suggested, because that we are in the Woodcrest community, and this changes our trajectory or our vision of what we expected for our children and their schools completely. We wanted the continuity from elementary school to middle school to high school with all the same community, all the same friends in the social groups. The issue that I'm having with all of the options for Woodcrest and the other schools associated in that grouping, if we go with option 5, that's Rosa becomes a middle school combined with East students and West students. When they go on to high school, they're going to be divided between West High School and East High School. I feel it's going to put them at a great disadvantage socially, and maybe academically, because we don't know what the curriculum is going to look like across the 3 schools, where Beck and Carusi, they're going to have 3 solid years together, moving up together to the high schools. Rosa, these students are going to be split. And they're going to be going into high school at, I feel, a very challenging transition into high school. Ninth grade transition, I feel, is a much bigger transition than a sixth grade transition, going into a much larger school. Older students from ninth to 12th grade. It can be scary going into high school. And I feel like that middle school is going to be at such a disadvantage because they're going to be split. Where the other, like I said, Beck and Crucy are going to go in together. They might be considered an outsider. I know they're going to have their own groups of friends, and through outside activities, maybe they can build up some relationships, but those groups are going to be separate. So I hope that would be considered in the groupings of the elementary going into the middle schools. So I hear everyone's disapproval or dissatisfaction of a sixth grade center, but with the sixth grade center, it would level up the field a little bit more, that everyone's together for sixth grade. Then students at Crucy and Beck would all be moving up together and be in that transition together. And it also would help a little bit with families that moved into the district for the specific schools, that it would keep them maybe in the specific schools that they wanted for at least 7th and 8th grade. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. We have 15 minutes left. We have a hard stop at 9 tonight. At the administration of the board, we were at a late meeting last night, and I just want to respect everybody's time and also the community. So we have a lot of hands raised online. We may not be able to get to everybody, but we'll do our best. We're going to go to Seth Friedlander.
And Ms. Stern, we'll also post, we have a dedicated email address that we'll post at the end of the meeting as we are closing up, so that if folks do not get an opportunity to speak tonight, that they can submit their thoughts as well.
Thank you. Okay. Seth Friedlander, please go ahead. So, yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Seth Freelander, and I want to present to you a unique point of view. I have been a high school teacher at Haddonfield Memorial High School for 22 years. And in those 22 years, I've taught freshmen every year. So I'm in the trenches. And what I can tell you is that teaching ninth graders, and these are students coming from one middle school who've known each other, coming from 3 elementary schools who all know each other, and the ninth graders still have an incredibly difficult transition. So I'm speaking out against option 4. I'm echoing a lot of the thoughts we've had here tonight. Transitions are just counterproductive. It takes at least a marking period and a half to 2 marking periods till ninth graders just feel comfortable. So the transition, and I'm even seeing it with my daughter, who is a 6th grader, just the transition to 6th grade is incredibly difficult. And then asking them to make the transition again from 6th grade to 7th grade, as an educator in the trenches, that is just incredibly counterproductive. And I want to share with you one final thought, something that a former principal said to me my first year as we were watching a school dance. He said, a very interesting thing happens in the spring. The new students, for the first time, really take ownership of the school, and the students who are leaving finally feel like they've outgrown the school. And I think by having students only do 1 year in a school, that just robs them of that experience, that wonderful experience of gaining ownership and belonging in that school. So this is the perspective of an educator. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody in the audience? Go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Amanda Lamprey. I'm coming to you as a parent from a Clara Barton 2nd grader. And I'm coming because I just wanted to share how much we love the Clara Barton family. We are Clara Barton. My son comes home and talks about it, the family days that they have. And when you talk about making neighborhood schools and essentially taking apart the Clara Barton family to send some based upon Route 70, I understand how on a map that could look like a good plan. But the thought of my son and his classmates being separated because of that is heartbreaking on the idea of everything that we've been through. And so many people tonight have shared so many passionate comments. I don't envy your job of navigating through them, but I did just, the purpose of me coming tonight was because I feel so strongly that I don't want the Clara Barton family ripped apart. So I end with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on the line, we have Laura.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Hi, my name is Laura Pendergast. I am the parent of a third grader, a preschooler, and also a 1-year-old. So I've got a long time that I'm going to be in this district still. And the first thing that I want to do is thank the administration and the board for your leadership. This is an impossible time to be a leader in education. And I'm so grateful for what you're doing and tackling these problems. It's really difficult. And I don't think that that gets enough credit. The second thing that I just want to say is that based on the demographic report from a few years back, we've known for a long time now that several of our elementary schools are going to become severely overcrowded. And it's happened. My elementary school, ARC, is incredibly overcrowded. It's so overcrowded that I live right across the street. And I'm not entirely sure that my 3 and 1-year-old will get to go there because a lot of kids are going to get sent away who are districted to ARC. So that's a big crisis with how overcrowded some of our elementary schools are. I hope that serious consideration is given to real redistricting at the elementary school to get away from this overcrowding problem. And what that has to do with the middle schools is, again, I've mentioned this before, if we are making all these decisions about our about our middle school redistricting based on the current elementary schools, we know that those are likely to change. And I hope that you're going to seriously change them because there's big problems there. So either the outcomes at the middle school level are all going to be changed and our current data are inaccurate, or we're not going to really do a thorough job of rezoning the elementary schools. Both possibilities here are problematic to me. So I just really hope that real thought and effort is given to working on the elementary schools and the middle schools at the same time. By the way, I'm glad you're getting rid of the Rosa lottery. I think that's the right move, and I'm proud of our district for doing that. I just think we need to do the elementary schools at the same time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll go to, I think we have time for probably 1 to 2 more comments, and then we're going to go to wrap up. So one in the room, please. Thank you.
I am Angela Markowski. I am a mother of a 6th and 4th grader. I am on the south side of Route 70, so that dividing line affects me. And of course, option 1 is very popular in my house. I was just curious as to why Barton and Knight are 2 of the schools. And I heard today about the influx of families into Barclay, but I'm also wondering, are we expecting an influx of students from the apartment complexes that exist and are currently being built? And therefore there'll be an influx of students to Barton and therefore Crucy. My 6th grader loves Crucy. Sorry, he's thriving. He has a lot of male teachers that are huge role models for him. He's also a member of the soccer team, and upperclassmen have been very inclusive. I feel like if we move him, I'll be starting over and therefore he'll be missing out on that. And a lot of his friends from first grade are there as well. My fourth grader asked me today why I hate Crucy. And I said, that's not my decision, bud. For him, it's very simple. And I wish it would be that he would tell me that he wants to go to school with his brother, but essentially it's that he really just wants to go to school with his friends. As mentioned multiple times tonight, I was wondering if my sixth grader will be allowed to finish at Crucy, and if there would be thought for siblings to attend the same school as their older brothers or sisters. So therefore, if my older son gets to finish at Crucy, would my younger son be therefore grandfathered in as well? That's all I have. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, it's 9:55, so perhaps Dr. Molash, you could, any responses and then transition to your comments, and then we'll wrap up with the other board member comments.
So in terms of the influx of students from the apartments, we look at those numbers there. We are not expecting, based on the demographics that were provided through the township and through our demographic study, anything that would be overwhelming that the middle schools wouldn't be able to absorb in terms of what's there. So we use the data. It's a model that's built through Rutgers, is how they do the analysis based on the types of units, the cost of the units, and that kind of thing. So that certainly is part of the discussion. So next steps. Thank you. Just share this image. On top. So one of the things that we did is we have a dedicated email address that Mr. Plavinsky and Mr. Holman is live, I believe now. So it's msfeedback@chclc.org. I know that there were a number of other people that were online, and I know that there are folks sitting here at tables that also wanted to share their perspectives at the microphone. We encourage you to use this. You can certainly continue to contact us. You can certainly continue to contact the buildings and that kind of thing. This will allow us to put all that information together in one spot, so we can more easily inform the board because it's all in one area, right? So what we will do is take this information. The board has been presented with results from the thought exchange. They'll get the information that comes through from this email, from the other discussions and all that have taken place. So we encourage people to use this msfeedback@chclc. This will be open for the foreseeable future. We don't have a time when it'll be shut down, certainly as the discussions continue. As we said earlier, next Thursday evening on the 3rd of February from 7 to 8:30 on the Zoom platform, we're going to have a discussion that's going to focus on families of children with IEPs and 504s, again, talking about what the impact and a change in the middle school would do, and to get input from those folks. And then on Tuesday, February the 8th, the board will engage in a discussion during the work session, the regularly scheduled work session. So this is an ongoing discussion. The board is very aware of the timeframes, the impact of the timeframes, especially with the open enrollment process for fifth grade parents and families and children in terms of looking at Beck, Crucy, and Rosa for September of 2022. I'm sure that will factor into the discussion that the board has on the 8th of February. So again, thank you to everyone who participated, and we encourage you to continue to participate. And now if we want to turn it over, I don't know, Ms. Stern, if Ms. Soroyo, Ms. Stong, Ms. Elmore Stratton, if there are final thoughts that any of the three of you would like to share.
Thank you. So maybe we'll just go down the line. I don't know if we want to, Sally, if you want to just start, if any final comments as we wrap up, and we'll just go 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. My name is Sally. Thank you everybody for coming. Yeah, we are all listening in from the community and would like to get all your feedback as much as possible. So when it does come to decision making, that would be very helpful for all the board members. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Again, thank you everyone for allowing us the opportunity to share your time tonight to discuss the redistricting and middle school plans. We'll continue to read and hear everyone's voices and make sure that that's put into all the conversations we have at the table. So please continue to share your questions, comments, concerns, everything you can think of, and let us know, because we're definitely listening.
I echo everyone, what's already been said. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you for coming out tonight and sharing with us so that we have good things to go back and discuss as a board. And I just want to applaud the students that spoke tonight. Great job being very to the point. And I encourage you to continue to gather and have these conversations and advocate for what you want. If anything we've learned in this pandemic is that young people have a voice that needs to be heard and they can initiate change. And at the same time, the only thing that is consistent is change. So if we can all remember that, I think we can get through the next couple of weeks and make some real positive movement that will be fair and even to everyone. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
And good night.
And again, thank you, Mr. Povinsky and Mr. Holman, for everything you did to keep us online.